So today we're going to touch on and talk about menopause and memory, or menopause and the connection between menopause and cognitive function. Okay, but just touch on it briefly. We have done two podcasts with two amazing women who go into this in a lot more detail, and they also have books that are really useful. I've read them and they're brilliant. One of them is Susan Saunders, and in fact I feature in one of her books called The Power Decade, which talks about postmenopause and what we can do to empower ourselves in the journeys of other women. And then the other lady is Dr. Sabina Brennan, and we've spoken to her on a couple of occasions on Instagram, but we've got a podcast with her, and both of these women have wonderful insight into brain health. The third person that I would recommend, and the book that I would recommend you read, is a book by Dr. Lisa Mosconi, and it's called The XX Brain. And that talks really in depth, but in an understandable way, about brain health and menopause. And the things that I have learned speaking to all of these women is that estrogen receptors are everywhere in our body, and that includes our brain. And estrogen is a significant hormone. And the reason it is significant is because it literally is involved in pretty much every process, but predominantly in the brain. And there is more and more research that is being done into this, still not quite enough, but there are some research papers that may start to link the fact that there, symptoms such as hot flushes and other symptoms that are brain symptoms, if they start very early or they're very dominant in your menopause, there may be a link between that and increased brain fog. And then perhaps there is long-term impact or effects on memory as well, and cognitive function. But there is no sound research yet to link that, but that is something that is kind of being looked at, I suppose, in the world of research. But we do know that there is something that we do go through called brain fog for many, many, many women in menopause. This is hugely debilitating, and it certainly was for me, definitely. And again, there is a bit of research that perhaps indicates that actually brain fog and memory, may be cognitive function, may reduce further in postmenopause, but it definitely feels very, very uncomfortable during perimenopause. And when we talk about brain fog, it's that sort of thing where you can see a word, you can visualize it, you can actually see the object that it responds to, but you can't actually say the word out loud. Also, being forgetful, turning up into a meeting and not knowing why you're there, or who it is you're meant to be talking to, forgetting names, forgetting journeys and how to get from A to B, and things perhaps that you've always done as well. So it can be quite debilitating, I have to say. It certainly was for me. I really struggled with reading. Reading was a big thing for me, and I was an avid reader. I'm trying to bring back that reading into my life again, but actually I used to get really anxious when I used to try to pick up a book or read an email, because I couldn't remember one line to the next line, what I just read. I couldn't actually see it as a whole within context, if that makes sense. So it actually became really frightening. So reading each word individually, then going back and thinking, what did I just read? It really was very hard. So what are the things that we can do about this? Well, it is really important that, like I said, have a listen to those podcasts and have a look at the books that the ladies that I mentioned have written. But some of the things that they say that are super important is diet. Diet is really important. Making sure you're getting the right nutrients that you need. Things like choline, which are really prevalent in broccoli and in walnuts and in egg yolks. Getting things like the right fats as well. So lots of, unsaturated fats. So olive oils, making sure we're getting enough of those, because actually our brain is predominantly fat. The other thing we need to do is really make sure we're focusing on our sleep, because when we sleep, that's the time when our brain just kind of resets in a way. It doesn't really ever reset, but it kind of clears out all the rubbish, takes out all the rubbish, and it kind of helps us to start again, so we don't store and build up plaque and things like that, which are the kind of preliminary markers for things like Alzheimer's and dementia. Another thing that is really important to do is make sure we exercise and stay active. So getting outdoors is good for us as well. for our sleep too. But that fresh air, that daylight is really important. And also movement and exercise helps to get oxygen to every part of our body, keeps us stimulated and keeps us learning. That follows on to the next thing, which is learn something new, whatever it may be. Don't shy away from it, whether it's learning how to use social media, or learning how to knit, or learning how to sew, or learning how to dance. It doesn't matter, or another language, whatever it may be, just keep yourself learning. Keep sociable. Make sure you interact and engage with other people, because actually that's a really good skill to have. And I don't know about anybody else, but during COVID, for sure, I was one of those people saying, I'm fine. I love Zoom. It's really great and all the rest of it. Actually, when I went out into the real world and started socializing again, it was hard work. Suddenly had to read and look at people's body languages in a different way. So it's super important to keep your brain active. Your brain is constantly growing, so do not think that your brain stops growing, okay? But it is like any other muscle. If we don't use it, we lose it. So really important to keep your brain active, keep yourself active as well. Hope you found this useful.